Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Line Mentality by Linepro. I'm Coach Linny, and I'm joined today by Kurt Hines. He's the head coach at Coronado High School in San Diego, California. Coach, thanks for being with us today.
Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah. Well, I want to start off like I normally do to just get a little bit of background and have you take us through, your path from high school football to being the head coach where you are today.
Yeah, so I grew up in Barrington, Rhode Island. Like yourself, we spoke a little bit offline. Played center and defensive end. So obviously being good looking and playing center kind of go hand in hand.
There you go.
Um, I was a good football player in high school. You know, one of only two of our guys that went on to play college, but I wasn't. I didn't think I was better than I was. I was good. Played Division III football in New Hampshire at Plymouth State College. Transitioned like most linemen. I ended up going to tight end. You know, I had that dream of carrying the ball or doing something, and I was a pretty darn good blocking tight end. They didn't send me out on many routes, but played college football. And then started coaching my senior year in college. One of my professors was looking for a volunteer for a Special Olympics flag football team. So she approached me. I asked a buddy of mine who I was playing football with, and had never thought about coaching prior to that moment. And saw this girl with Down syndrome catch a football, and her eyes just lit up. Like she just got wow. And I was like, dang, I want to do that. I want to have that impact. I already knew I wanted to be a school teacher. I was in school for education. But that was something really, really special. So got my first teaching job. First 4 years, I was out in the boondocks of New Hampshire and just kind of getting life started with being married, 22 years old and having young children. So didn't do anything with coaching my first 4 years teaching. Went to a different district and reached out to the head coach of a very successful high school and said, what can I do? And this is the suggestion I always give to people that want to get into coaching. It's like, look to volunteer, look to, do the grunt work. And I approached him and said, not looking for a paid position. I'll do anything and everything. And he actually had a paid position. And it was a blessing in disguise where it was a head coaching position for the freshmen. Now, I had never coached before. And he said, oh, and by the way, we don't have an assistant for you yet. So 2 of the 7 years that I was there, I had no assistants. And just learned a lot of the game, did a lot of things wrong. There's no doubt about it. But learned from a very good coach. He knew football and he loved people. And that's something that he just came out to San Diego last month. And it was great to have him see where I am now and to thank him for being a huge part of that. Loved it there. Loved everything about it. And there's no but. What happened was the head coach from the town I lived in, just the neighboring town, called and said, hey, coach, we're tired of coaching against you. Come coach with us. And our son, my wife and I have three daughters and one son. So our son was going to be a freshman in a few years. So I thought, why not? I'll start coaching there. So moved up to varsity there. And it was tough. It was I'll be a little bit PC here and not say the name, obviously. And, everyone has a different story we don't know about, but didn't agree with the X's and O's, but that was the least of it. Just the way he treated people. And it was just different, different. So I said to my wife, I'm like, I'm done. I'm going to honor my commitment. It was like week 3, but after this, I'm done. And she's like, well, come apply to be a head coach where I am. She was working at a brand new high school. And the head coach stepped down after 1 year and they only had a freshman and sophomore team. And my wife, she's my best friend, biggest supporter. But I was like, hon, I was a freshman coach for 7 years, a varsity assistant for 3 weeks now. I'm not qualified. And she called me out on my own mantra as far as being positive and optimistic and going for things. And she's like, what do you have to lose? And I thought about it. I'm like, all right, I have 30, 40 minutes of an interview hour of my life I'll never get back, but really I have nothing to lose. So applied for the job. And it was funny because working in the main office for my wife, Jill, she saw all the applications that came through from different states, from all over, because Bedford, New Hampshire was a very affluent, or is a very affluent community, and it was a brand new high school, and a lot of people wanted that job. And I don't say this to sound humble. I got the job. I was definitely not the most qualified for the job. I must have sold myself well or something. God, my faith is everything to me. God had a plan for things, but there's no doubt in my mind there were and still are more qualified people for the job. But I remember when I got that job, they had asked me, the principal and the athletic director, they said, Coach, if you get this job, how long, being the community we're in, very successful community, a lot of parents are doctors, lawyers, business owners, they expect success. How long before you think you'll be in the playoffs? And without hesitation, out of complete confidence and ignorance, I said within 3 to 5 years. And they both laughed, and I'll never forget it. And it wasn't a mean laugh. It was just kind of like you're chuckling like, yeah, right. So I got the job and inherited 3 coaches that were there, played college football together. They did, not with me, at a different school. 2 of them did. And my first year, I always jokingly say we set records my first year in the state of New Hampshire. And people are, some are impressed, some are annoyed, like, all right, who's this cocky guy? And the records we set were we get our teeth kicked in more than anyone else. Like when you go through, it was a brand new stadium, brand new everything, their school, everything. Excuse me. And when you go through and, shake hands after a game and people are like, great game or good game, nice effort. No one even lied to us. No one said that. They were like, great field. This is beautiful. I was like, man, we're so bad you won't even lie to us. I'm like, this is horrible. So, so we lost every game our first year. And one kind of turning point for me in my coaching career, meeting we had at the end of the season, a moment I'll never forget was we had a coaches meeting, talked about X's and O's, talked about offense, defense, special teams, off-season training, what worked, not much, what didn't, where we're headed. And I told my assistant coaches, I said, I want to open a can of worms, but I want to get better. So I'm not going to change just for the sake of it, but if you would have me do something different as a head coach, what would you have me do? Nice. Now, 2 of these guys played Division I football at UNH and were studs, And once again, I came in, this new coach, and we lost every game bad. So it was quiet for probably about 15 seconds. Sounded like 15 minutes. And my line coach, great friend now, he looked at me and he goes, Hines, I don't think the kids respect you. And I could feel myself getting hot, like veins popping. I'm like, all right, what do you mean? He's like, I don't know. He's a great friend, but he has no filter. He's like, I don't think they respect you. I'm like, Derek, give me one example. Did they ever talk back? Did they ever show up late? Did they ever leave early? Did they ever leave the weight room and locker room and the field a mess or, stuff I didn't know about? He's like, no, none of that. He goes, they all love you. He goes, I don't think they're afraid of you. And it was a paradigm shift for me because I said, Derek, those are 2 completely different things. He goes, well, I think a head coach should be feared. I'm like, I'll never agree with that. I will never agree with that. I said, when a young man is on the verge of doing something bad to himself, when he gets a girl pregnant, when he wants to come out of the closet, when he's having his parents who are battling every night going through a divorce, if he's afraid of me, he might say yes or no, sir, yes, coach, no, coach, but he's never going to come to me. I'm never going to be that person in his life. And so we agreed to disagree. And he was never someone that I considered having off the staff because he did love the kids and he was great still is great at what he does. But it was just different coaching styles. So our first year we lost every game. And second year we won 2 games. Third year we won 5 games. And then the last 4 years we went to the state championship 3 out of the 4 years, each time in a higher division. So yeah, it was truly kind of made for movies type thing, but we never won it. So that's why it won't be a movie. But it was amazing. My last 4 years there, we had, in that time also, even though it was a brand new high school, we had did a fundraiser for a brand new weight room. So we had that underway. My final season, we were 11-0, lost in the state championship. In the semifinal game, our starting quarterback, who was also our starting safety, broke his leg. And our backup was an amazing young man, good quarterback, but just not the same dynamics. If we had him, we still would have lost in that game. The other team was that good, and we just maybe we were outcoached, outplayed, a little bit of combination of both. But it would have been closer if we had that quarterback. But so that final season, we were 11-0. We're returning. We had 144 players in the program, freshmen through seniors. I think we were only graduating 22 seniors, and I believe out of that, only like 7 of them were starters. So we were poised to just continue to have tremendous success. And then our oldest of 4 kids called. She had moved out here to San Diego to go to college, had gotten married, and she said, I'm pregnant. And my heart leapt. I was like, yes, I'm going to be a granddad, young and all that, and just thrilled about it. And then moments later, I was like, oh, my God, we're moving. I was like, because I knew my wife and I, without even discussing it, we talk about everything, but we knew we didn't want to be grandparents on the other side of the country.
Mm.
So we left, and both my wife and I are born and raised on the East Coast. So we left everything, everyone we knew, moved out here to San Diego, and knew no one at all. Started teaching elementary school again, and I was an assistant at one school for 2 years. Very successful program, but just had kind of felt that call to be a head coach again, and leads us up to present day, where we're going on my third season as head coach at Coronado High School. And it's as we were talking briefly offline, a history or a school with a long history of football. The school's 104 years old, great potential for tradition, but we're in the process now of just recreating a culture. And I'm excited about it. My first year at Coronado, we won 2 games. Last year we were 7-4, and I say that because I think so many people that even are outside of football but a fan or maybe new to football, the records are important if you want to keep your job to a certain extent. But Joe Ehrman, I'm not sure if you've ever read his book Inside Out Coaching. One of my favorite coaching books, and it's more about life than it is about football, but the two go hand in hand. Was talking about the impact of being a transformational coach as opposed to a transactional coach. And, coaches that just do it for their own resume, do it for their own ego, as opposed to the coaches that really want to transform lives and really help change and make the world a better place. So I'm loving life. For me, football is football, East Coast, West Coast, wherever you are. If you love the game, know the game, and love people, you can be successful.
No, I love that. That's great. And I had seen somewhere about you mentioning that book before, and I think that's really great. I wrote it down as something I want to pick up because I think that's so important. I was just seeing an article yesterday about an unnamed Southern California college coach and the way the way the program's going. Myself, I played for Mike Riley at Oregon State, and that was my only offer. I had some smaller schools as a backup, but that was my only big D1 offer. And most of the other schools had been all about the height, saying, oh, well, we don't recruit any O-linemen under 6'4" and all that. And he was really the only one who looked past the papers and into my heart. And they didn't even know if I was going to play O-line or D-line or be a long snapper or maybe lose weight and be a linebacker, because I had done all that in high school. And he was just he was like you. He was a heart first coach who was more focused on creating good men than he was about winning. And then luckily, when you do that, the success should come as long as you get the right people around you, which is something I thought of. You were talking about that the O-line coach saying that. I think it's a great model to be the loving head coach and the connecting and the friends, and then get the fire and brimstone assistant coaches to be the feared ones.
Well, it's funny though, because I get on my guys, like I yell and scream, and we have a no swearing policy. And I want to quickly add that I don't think the people that swear are any less intelligent or that I'm any better than them at all. It's just, I used to swear like it was my job in high school and college, not proud of it, but didn't think of it,
Right.
And then when I got my first teaching job, I had a nightmare one night, like the day before school starts, like what if I slip in class? And then I had children very young, and I thought, man, I don't want my kids to come to my practice and hear Dad or Mr. Hines say something out of Coach Hines' mouth they don't normally hear. So that's where I came up with the swearing policy for players and coaches. But I yell and scream all the time, but it's never derogatory. It's never to intimidate or bully or put down. And the world's riddled of people that do that. There's enough of people that do that. So I've often been, you mentioned fire and brimstone. I feel like I am that coach, but at the same time, I think if you love something or someone enough, that's in you innately. Like that's just who you are. And you can love someone so fiercely and not ever put them down or have them be afraid of you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And to anybody who's been through it, anybody who's played college, and beyond, they can tell the difference, very easily. And as a kid, it could be hard to tell the difference. So, I'm very often telling kids out there, like, try to learn the difference, because it's so valuable to be able to hear a coach yelling at you and still get the coaching and learn and see that as love and not be some of these kids can't get yelled at and learn at the same time. They go into fear mode and their brains shut off. So
Right.
I think it's so important to build that connection. And it's really obvious that you do that well. So, like you said, it's, you can raise your voice, you can be passionate, you can be fierce, but there's always going to be a difference between tearing down and building up, no matter what the volume of the voice. So I think that's super important. I want to rewind, back to New Hampshire. I mean, you guys were Division III, and I did a little research that Division IV is the lowest and Division I is the highest. Is that right?
Yeah, New Hampshire, like California, is kind of crazy sometimes. When I first started coaching New Hampshire, there were 6 divisions.
Okay.
Way too, and 6 being lowest, 1 being the highest. Way too many divisions for a small state like New Hampshire.
Sure.
And then they went to 3 divisions. So then went to 4 for like 2 years. But for the majority of the time that I was a head coach there, it was 6 divisions, and then right away went to 3 divisions. We're Division 3, 2, and 1. No, you're right. Actually, no, there were 4. You're absolutely right. I'm thinking about Plymouth, who was a powerhouse in Division 4. Yeah, you're right. Very good. Good on you.
Well, Wikipedia,
It's there you go. But yeah, so we had in 3 years bumped up right away.
Why was that? What was it? A number of students thing, or a new school just getting kind of introduced, or you guys were killing it in football and they let you come up, or what was the story there?
The discussion with the NHIA in New Hampshire was that the divisions were based on enrollment. And then what happened is certain schools started having more success over longer periods of years. And they said, well, they've got to get bumped up. And conversations coaches had. What happened with us was we kind of got thrown into and it was baptism by fire. And I loved everything about it. Let me back up to my first 7 years coaching when I talked about Sauhegan with that one coach who just gave me that freshman coaching position. He was great. Once again, in every aspect, the only 1-2 critiques, he would have anyone on his staff. So during game days, we looked like a college coaching staff. But these were some guys that only came once a week, and so I learned from that. And that's not a knock on him, but I tell my guys, listen, we got to be all in. We got to be there every day, and obviously family comes first. Certain times you have emergencies, but guys are all in. And another thing with Mike was. As coaches, not in front of the players, but we would often be like, Mike, because we were killing teams. Well, let's bump up. Let's petition to jump up. And one conversation he had, just he and I, we were fairly close. He's like, Kurt, you don't understand. And I was new. It was like the 3rd year coaching. He's like, if we bump up, we're going to have to fight every week. And I looked at him, I'm like, I know. I'm like, Mike, why, that's why we're doing this. He's like, no, like every week's going to be a battle. I'm like, yeah. So I just disagree with that. And once again, everything about it, love the man as a man, as a coach. But you want to battle. So what happened to us was we had some success, like I said, not early on. The first 3 years were tough. But as soon as we got bumped up to Division II, like most coaches, we're competitors to the core, or we're not going to last. And one of the coaches from a neighboring town had said, and he was quoted in the paper, Coach Hines does a good job, but they're a Division III team. They can't compete in Division II. So I was like, bring it. And that was locker room, weight room material for our guys. Yeah. And we fed off that all year. And so we got bumped up to Division II our first year, made it to the playoffs that year, lost in the state championship by 6. A heartbreaker. But it was fantastic. The very next year, we get bumped up to Division I. Now, I had so many emails from parents and from reporters saying, this is ridiculous, da-da-da-da. And I thought, this is great. Now, I felt going into Division I, we're going to be a middle-of-the-pack team. Like, we're going to have to fight week after week after week. But I'd rather be competing against the best, truly against the best. Because, and we have in our brand new weight room now here in Coronado a sign that says competition breeds success. I would always tell my players, listen, and I'm not a basketball player by any means, but I teach 4th grade. I'm like, listen, I can go out every recess and kill it. I'll be the best ball player out there. I said, but I'm going against a bunch of 4th graders. I go against any of you guys, things aren't going to look so good. So I said, so we can be playing against a bunch of, 4th graders. And I wasn't knocking the other teams, but I really had to embrace, and I knew our players would kind of follow my lead, either complain about it, which does nothing, or embrace it and just give it our all. So funny story about our first year in Division Two. Our Division One rather. I think we ended up. I think it was 7-2 or so. And we had a very good season, but we opened up with the perennial powerhouse who had like 3,600 students. We had 1,200, and we had a horrible Wednesday practice leading up to this first game in Division One. And I stopped the practice, got all the team together, shared a story with them. There's a poem called "The Coffee Being the Carrot and the Egg." I'm not sure if you ever heard about it.
Mm-mm.
I won't recite the poem, but the very short of it is: take a pot of boiling water, you put a carrot in, the carrot goes soft. You put the egg in, it's soft to start with. You put it in, it goes hard. You put the coffee bean in, nothing happens to the coffee bean. It changes everything around it, changes the water. So I was telling the story to the players, middle of the practice during Wednesday's practice, and I was like, Friday night, guys, inevitably the crap's gonna hit the fan. At some point against Pinkerton, something's gonna go wrong. And I started getting like amped up, kind of pregame talk. I'm like, you're either gonna go soft and give up and blame the officials, blame your buddies. You're gonna go hard and start blaming them, or you're gonna be like a friggin', So I have no swearing policy. I'm like, you're gonna be like a friggin', but I didn't say friggin', coffee bean, and all their lies, and eyes popped up. And I wasn't trying to say it to get their attention. I was just so caught up in the moment, and they all started cheering like it was just pregame talk. I did my 25 push-ups right there in front of them. We had a great practice. Fast forward, Thursday walkthrough, Friday game. We get the ball first. They kick it off, goes through our receiver's hands, picks it up, gets tackled at like the 1-inch line. So I'm like, all right, crap's hitting the fan.
There it is.
We run the ball, get like 3 yards, do another play, get like 2 yards, do another play. We had to pass. It was 3rd and long, and nearly picked off. So we have to punt. So our back is against the wall. We punt it almost through his hands, gets it off, goes through their returner's hands. We recover. And then we ended up winning that game 14-7. Shocked the entire state because everyone who picked us, I think the smallest percentage was to have us lose by 35. And we won 14 or 12-7. I think it was 14-7. And ended up, having a great season and then seeing them the following year at the state championship. But that was just something special. It was just truly, one of those opportunities. And I always say we, because to be a part of it, I was the head coach, but we built something from nothing. Bedford High School never existed. So to build it into a powerhouse in such a short time was cool. Just such a blessing. Funny story was my line coach, who, like I said, became great friends, took over the program when I left. They continue to have great success, dropped in numbers, almost half, but won 2 state championships. Won the year right after I left, and then won 2 years after. His wife is from Oceanside, an hour up the street from us here in California, and they just had the first baby. So he just moved out here and took over a program, a very successful program at San Marcos High School, where I'm thrilled for him. I mean, so it'll be interesting to see now all the old OGs, we call them, the coaches that were there when we were there are gone now from Bedford High School. So it'll be bittersweet to watch, hopefully, the continued success, but it's part of you that no one's a part of anymore.
Right.
So
yeah, time changes everything eventually.
It does.
It's tough to, see that because, for me leaving Oregon State, and then you turn around and things just change. And the brand new weight room we had is now being upgraded and changed. And then they turned our old weight room into a player's lounge, and then you say all this stuff, I wish they had that when I was here. I wish they had that. But all the coaches leave and you go back and it just doesn't feel like the same place, but as life, things change. And,
it's funny too, when we had the weight room we had in Bedford, New Hampshire, right before we did the fundraiser, 2 years before, our athletic director put a sign in the weight room. And I don't remember it exactly. I've got to go back, but it was something to the effect, a quote that said, you can see as far as you can see today because you're standing on the shoulders of the men before you. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I didn't say this to him, but in my mind, I was like, oh, that's fine, whatever. But you know what? The longer I coach, and as you just mentioned, looking back now, I'm like, hell yeah. Yeah, that program is what it is today because of all those players and coaches and families and boosters and all that work they put in. So now that as I've matured, I guess, And my eyes have been opened more. I'm like, man, that guy had more wisdom than I realized. That sign speaks to me now.
Yep. No, I love it. One thing I had thought of when you were talking and telling the story about the bad week of practice, and violating the no swearing policy that for a moment, that is there's something to that. For one, I think a no swearing policy is great because if you allow it, there's really no line. It's just going to go on, and then all the kids will be swearing at some point, and it's okay because the coaches did it. So I think that's a great thing to implement. But the undervalued piece of that is it really does give you that opportunity for that once in a while one, and it makes everybody go, what? Like that
Yeah.
Did he really just, Coach Riley would use that, although he wouldn't go very far. Once in a while, he'd be like, gosh, damn it. And everybody would be like, what?
Yes.
And really get your attention. So that's a positive little extra bonus there, as long as you don't abuse it.
Yeah, exactly. And two quick things on that. My wife reminded me years ago, she would come by practice with the kids. And I think it was Abby, our now 24-year-old daughter, was crying one time. And because our kids, the joke in our house was they would hear me not swear, but just yell and get upset maybe once a year. It's just that's not in my nature. It's not who I am. And came to a practice, and I was yelling and screaming, just projecting my voice, just cheering on, just being just who I was as a coach. But she wasn't used to it. And the second thing was I had posted, I think it was a year or two, something about the no swearing policy on Twitter. And just it was a thought I had, put it out there. And one particular coach DM'd me and was berating me, got into a very good conversation. I could have blocked him or whatever, but just, oh, you have no idea. You probably never coached in the inner city. That's where these kids come from. And that's where I drew the line. I'm like, listen, that's like saying a young man who comes from an abusive household is used to being hit and smacked around. So that's how I'm going to coach him. I'm like, just because this is what they might hear every day. And my whole point was, as you mentioned, if they hear coaches do it, I don't want to be in a game, whether it's a preseason game or a playoff game, anything in between, have a bad call or what we perceive as a bad call, have a kid mumble what the F under his breath, have it cost us another 15 yards or whatever. And yes, I realize the world's changing, but depending on where we get our jobs and who we work for, if our boss says, hey, you've got to do this, and it wasn't on our job title or whatever, and we mouth off to them, there are consequences, So I just want to teach them that, once again, not that I'm better than anyone that doesn't swear by any means. And I do, mess up, but it teaches for me discipline also.
Mm-hmm.
So that's that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just having any parameters that you enforce is a great life lesson for any kids. And with due respect to that guy's opinion, the kids that come from the worst places probably need that the most. And,
exactly.
And, that's the big opportunity to change their futures. So no, I really think that's a great outlook. You're on Twitter, you got tens of thousands of followers, and you've been doing that for quite a while. I saw, I looked at a lot of the stuff. It's really great. We'll dig into some of it, but I was curious, whether it's the way you were parented or what you went through in high school or just your general experience. I mean, you knew you were going to be a teacher young. You knew you were going to be a father young. I guess you've been very intentional about the way you've lived, but what is it? Have you always been this way where you're positive and strong and got a great, kind of outlook on everything? Where does that come from?
I appreciate that. This is, if we could get a third party video in here now, have my parents at one of the screens, they would tell you a different story. I've always been an optimist. I'm one of 3 children. Love my brother, but man, we're complete polar opposites. And my sister's got her own thing going on. But growing up, I was someone that loved. I've always been passionate about football. My faith has always been huge for me, and that's a blessing. I feel. But growing up, I was a hellion. I got arrested all the time.
Wow.
I got my freshman year back. I won't go into too much detail. Might be the last podcast I do, but my freshman year back in college, I got into a fight with 3 police officers.
Wow.
At our house. My brother and I had I had a party. My older brother got upset because I had too many people there, so I started to fight him. He called the police, and he should have. I was out of line. Long story short, got into a fight with 3 police officers. It would have been 3 felonies. I had to pay for the time they missed out of work and crazy stuff. But it went to court. My parents refinanced their house, and my parents are, God bless them, blue collar, hardworking. They didn't. It wasn't like they had money. They just bail them out. And in hindsight, I I don't know what would have happened if they didn't do that, because I had 3 years probation. The felonies got lowered to simple assaults and paid through the nose, which I should have. Crazy stuff, but I didn't learn my lesson then. And my parents loved me, and there's no blame here. It's 100% my fault. But I kept drinking and fighting, and I loved the rush of it. It wasn't that I thought I was the toughest guy. I was just the most stupid guy, because I would look for someone your size or someone else bigger and say, hey, he probably has an attitude. Who says that? It's just
right.
So there was an arrest I had because I was on probation. I would have to call my probation officer when I was in college playing football and say, hey, Brian, we're going to Bridgewater, we're going to Keene, we're going to wherever. And that got old really fast. And once again, I never blamed anyone else. But I got arrested on one road trip, and the chief of police where I was arrested was really good friends with my quarterback in high school, his father, who was the chief of police in our town. So when I got arrested, they found out my rap sheet, and he pulled me into his office the following morning, and he goes, tell me about this fight with the 3 police officers in Rhode Island. This was like 2 years later. I was still on probation. And I was never a punk, but I was just stupid. And I was like, well, just humbly, just this is what happened. He's like, no, cut through the BS. Like, I heard you beat him up pretty bad. And I looked at him, and he's like, listen. He's like, and he gave me a life lesson. I don't remember the police officer's name, but it was another one of those paradigm moments for me. He leaned into his desk and he's like, Officer Young says, or Chief Young says, you're one of the nicest kids he's ever met. He's like, so either you're BSing everyone and Eddie Haskell trying to be someone, or are you just going to wake up? What are you doing? And I was like, well, I just like fighting. He's like, then you're going to end up with your butt in jail for the rest of your life, And for me, it was like, wow, I say I want to be a teacher. I didn't yet at that point know I wanted to coach, but what am I doing with my life? So by the grace of God, met my wife, and got married, quit drinking, and it's one of those things now where when I look back and I share maybe too much, some people say, but I share everything with everyone. I feel like I'm an open book, and with my players, and I don't tell them to be funny or go into details to be impressive by any means. But just to say, listen, I'm a firm believer people can change. So if you have labeled and I say to my players, if you have labeled yourself as a CD student, or your parents have, or your teachers have, or if you've labeled yourself as just a backup player or whatever, just flip the script. Like that's entirely up to you and your power. And I'm not the success story of look where I was and look at the money I'm making now, but I say without sounding preachy, but I'm going to get preachy for a second. I'm one of the richest people I know. Now I teach elementary school. Almost every one of my friends makes more money than I do. But as far as quality of life, I'm married to my best friend. We have 4 kids, 2 grandkids. I'm teaching school, coaching high school football. If I die tomorrow, man, I've lived I don't want to. Got a lot of work to do, but I'm blessed. It's just I've done more stupid things than I can remember. But I feel like I can use that. So that's a long answer to your question, but
I love it.
I was raised by great parents, and went through a lot of stupid stuff, put them through hell. And I tell my players, I never get arrested during the football season. Not in high school. And I started getting arrested in like 7th grade, but not through 7th grade through college. Did I get arrested during football season? And in my mind, I was like, I care too much about my team, my brothers, my coaches. Well, I did, but I was an idiot because I was putting my parents who love me the most through hell. So I tell them now, I'm like, listen, don't stay out of trouble for me. Don't do it for your teammates. Do it for the people. And if we're part of that, great. But do it for the people that love you most. Do it for yourself. So it's I can get emotional about it sometimes, but it's life is good.
That's amazing. That's amazing. There's a couple people in the world I've heard say this. That a millionaire is not somebody who makes $1 million, but somebody who positively affects the lives of 1 million people. And that really stuck with me. It's not compounding interest, but compounding impact.
I love that. Yeah.
The people that you change will go on to change other people. And go ahead.
If I tweet that, call me out that I stole it from you. So,
yeah, no, you can.
if I share that,
absolutely. I wouldn't mind a tag. And honestly, I took it from somebody else. So that's just the thing. It's all about positive impact and starting waves. And, those kids are so lucky to have you as a coach. And for you to be open, you mentioned that some people say you share too much. That's just fear, that's just afraid of what the truth will do, but the truth is always right, and I'm honored that you shared that with us, because I think even if one or two kids out there is struggling or has, the wrong idea of himself, if they can hear that story and say, I can possibly, be different by the time I'm, early 40s or so.
There you go.
And it's just, when the kids are so young, they don't have a concept of even being able to change. And so it's so hard for them to see that possibility. And, whether it's they like to drink and fight, or they hate doing their schoolwork and they don't care about school, or they, disrespect their parents, or whatever it is, just to be open and recognize that something is wrong and that it doesn't have to be is a start, So I think it's great that you share that. And so, moving towards that, you tweet almost every day, something positive, really great takes that they're not, it's not phony, you can't make this stuff up. I mean, I don't know how you do it. Do you keep a list when you think of it, or you just tweet it right away, or what's your process for this?
I fought Twitter for the longest time, and my wife, because I paint murals and stuff in addition, just I've done that over the years. And when Facebook and Instagram came out, I'm like, that's more my speed. And my wife was like, get on Twitter. I'm like, I'm not doing that. So reluctantly, I finally did. And then for some reason, it just kind of blew up. And I do, once again, I don't ever want to shove my faith down people's throats, but I don't think there are accidents in life. I think there are tragedies, but I think everything happens for a reason. And I think God's given me this platform. I don't think I'm better than other coaches. There are no doubt in my mind, there are coaches that know X's and O's better and I know my stuff, but there are coaches that know more than I do. And I know there are thousands of coaches who love their players, who truly love them as people, not pawns. That being said, I just decided to start putting stuff out there in video and do other stuff, and it's resonated with some people. As far as, it comes to mind, like for all of us, I do my best things sometimes, sitting in the bathroom or whatever. And
sure.
I'll just put it down on my phone in the notes or whatever and tweet it out. But usually it's things that happen. Yesterday I was at the gym. I shouldn't admit this, but I was on the bike on my phone. So I was working, but not as hard as I should have.
Sure.
I'm not proud of that. But I got an email from someone, and it was I did a video yesterday about he and his wife, his son's graduating, and talked about how he didn't want to go to college, and they were asking me what can we do to help him, not see our goal, see our vision, but to help him along his journey. And right there and then I was like, if we all wake up, I think life presents opportunities all the time to share positivity, to share, impactful things. And I think the world is riddled with people that have loud voices that want to bash the president, or bash this religion, or bash football and concussions, or bash, the building or not of the wall, whatever it is. I think there are so many people out there who have such a loud voice nowadays, especially with social media, that want to bash things and add negativity. So I'm just going to be who I am and put it out there. And I'm sure it annoys certain people, and they're like, oh, this fluff coach or whatever it is, and that's fine. But as you mentioned, Coach, if one person, and I'm sure like you, I've been blessed over the years to get a great number of emails, phone calls, written letters, whatever, from people saying, hey, I was at this place and you brought me here. If one person's life is made easier, then that's what we're here for,
Yeah. And that's right along the lines of really very recently I've started thinking, but try to look at things in 100 years, right? Everybody that we're talking about, everybody and yourself and myself will all be the same, rotting corpses. And the question is, what's going to be different about the world because of me and, the people that I've interacted with, the things I've done, compared to, if I didn't do these things. Yeah. And some people look at that type of outlook and say, well, then why does it matter if we're gone anyways, right? And I think that's the key of ego death, of learning what that really means, is because it's not natural to look at yourself. And I mean, you only see things through your eyes.
Yeah.
And that's what we're all given. That's the only thing anybody's ever had, is to see things through their own eyes, and to be able to really identify with other people with oneness, and see things that way. I mean, that's the key to being a happy person. And I can see that happened to you. And I see this trend, and I don't think it's talked about a lot, but it seems like the people who have the toughest time early on as kids somehow can awaken from that, hatch out of that shell of darkness or problems or whatever it is. And so I'm seeing more and more of that as I go around and talk to good people and kind of ask questions and stuff. There's always kind of seems to be that theme of early on trouble and problems, and a big separation of who you truly are and then who you think you are.
Yeah.
And eventually it gets far enough apart that it causes a split. And if you can have the patience and survive, then you can get to this place where you can truly just live as who you are, and it's pure joy.
I love it. Yeah.
And so yeah, just like you guys, if there's one kid out there who takes that and gets a little bit of hope for the future, then this will all be worth it. So that reminds me of one tweet I saw you had talking about, parents. I think it was like, let your kids live for their dream. Oh no, it's that kids live, go after your own dream,
Yep.
For you, and parents, don't be afraid to let them fail in
Yes.
pursuit of it.
Yeah.
And just yesterday I had a parent texting, asking if they should give up, and okay, so don't give up. But what happens in 8 months after his senior season and he doesn't have any kind of offers or any options, and I have to tell him that it's a complete failure, and my thought was immediately like, that's so much better than giving up now,
Right.
to try and fail is so much better. So that tweet was right along those lines. I'm sure you had some sort of inspiration for that tweet as well, but
Yeah. Well, and then that tweet was actually the one I was referring to as far as the parent emailing me saying their son didn't want to go to college. Excuse me. I think so often in life, and I'm guilty of it, as well, but we fear failure. But if we really do take the time to reflect on where we are right now, you with your business, your career, where you're going, your goals, it's because you've, yes, worked hard and succeeded at a lot of things, but there's been other failures, If I had been offered every job I ever applied for, I wouldn't be the head coach of where I am now. I wouldn't be. I mean, to trust not just God's plan, and I say that not lightly at all, but to trust God's plan, but also realize that part of that plan is to have us fail, to have us be in dark places, so we can learn from them and grow. And I had also put something else out there about the analogy of a bow and arrow. If you ever shot a bow and arrow, if you don't pull back hard enough, the arrow's not going anywhere. And I think sometimes God pulls us back for a reason, and we fight that, we resist it. And for me, that's one of the hardest things to realize. All right, where's that fine line between fighting with all you've got for something and at the same time being patient?
Yes.
That's hard for me. It's like, all right, God, do you want me to fight for this, or should I just keep going along and and not waiting on his timing and just waiting and doing nothing, but be patient. So it's still a hard thing.
Absolutely. And I think for a teenager, with all of those things going at once, plus their parents' expectations and their teachers' expectations, it's so hard to remain patient and faithful. And you had a great video, and I don't know when you had posted it, but I watched it just yesterday. And it was talking about how depression is viewed and how, you wouldn't tell an athlete just to shake off diabetes, and I think that's really important, because we're at a time now where it seems that more and more teens are identifying as depressed, and there's people out there who don't believe it, don't give it credit, and then also there's a lot of different factors into that problem. So you mentioned that you've gone through tough times. You've known a lot of people, I'm sure, to go through tough times. Talk on that a little bit. What would you say to a kid if he's struggling?
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that video up. And as I had mentioned in the video, we wouldn't, and we being coaches, players, parents, the world, look at any world-class athlete that has asthma or diabetes and think anything less of them. We wouldn't, it wouldn't be a topic of conversation on the news or anything. It's just, all right, well, they have that. They take their medication. That's it. But when you hear about mental illness, we think it's something wrong with a person, something wrong, and I haven't studied the human body to any extent that I have any science behind this.
Right.
But why is it that our brain is any different than our muscles or ligaments and bones or whatever? It's all part of the structure that God has made us into. But I think there is that stigma of, all right, if I need to take this medicine for my brain, or if I need to take this for my clarity or my focus, that there's something wrong with me. And I know before, I'm not the only one, but when you have a loved one that is struggling with depression, what do you try to do? You try to fix it. And when you can't fix it, you think, well, they should just snap out of it because I get frustrated. Or think, what's wrong with me? If I was making more money, or if I lost a little weight, or if I had a bigger house or more cars, maybe they'd be happier. And it's none of that stuff. It's none of that stuff. It's just, and I think we live in a world today where, I know I'm older than you, but we didn't grow up with social media.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's a saying, comparison's the thief of joy. Well, when we went home, we weren't being compared to or comparing ourselves to anyone or anything outside of us. And now I think all of us, adults and children, are always on some type of tablet or phone or computer. And whether we're consciously comparing ourselves or not, it's out there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I'm so passionate about putting, as you mentioned, not staged, not fake positivity, but just who I am. And sometimes it's corny as all get out. I did, it was our last day of spring ball a week and a half ago, and I did this activity with them. And the guys ended up loving it. It ended up being a great activity, which I was more than pleased with. But I had told them, I said, guys, for those of you who stay in the program long enough, some of the things I pray will be impactful and you'll never forget. And then I laughed. I said, some of the things will annoy you because it's just going to be corny, But I think people need that. They need authentic, transparent, hey, this is who I am, the good, the bad, the ugly. But they need more people speaking into their lives. We all do, that are just going to say, hey, listen, I don't have the perfect, picture perfect, life, whatever you want to call it. But I love my life. My life is, and you mentioned, the young man that you had dealt with, personal things.
Mm-hmm.
I had to speak at a funeral years ago of a player that my wife and I, we painted a house with him one summer. Her father was kind of or still is, a guy that does everything under the sun as far as building houses and roofing and all that stuff. And shortly after that, he took his life. And not trying to feel like a martyr, because I know I poured into him. We connected on a personal level. But I thought, man, just what if? What if there was one more thing I could have said, one more thing I could have done? And
Yeah.
So it's needed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And, I've got great respect for the fact that, that you making these videos to delve into that subject, it just means a lot to me. So I was really happy to see that. And that was one of the things that made me say, hey, I've got to get this guy on the show because I want to move the needle in that direction, and if there happens to be anybody, player, coaches, kids out there struggling, obviously there's great resources out there, but, I'm sure Coach Hines and myself would be happy to hear from you if you just needed somebody to talk to or whatnot. So
absolutely. First of all, thank you. And you just remind me something also, something my wife had read years ago and she shared with me. And I was like, yes, you talked about going to the gym. And so often when we're not in the shape we're in, we go to the gym or we don't, but we're self-conscious. And she had read something or seen something where it talked about those guys that have the 8-pack abs or the girls that are fitness models. They're so wrapped up in what they look like and their things. They're not judging most often the person that's 300 pounds, the person that's 800 pounds. We all have all of us, whether we're millionaires financially, or as you mentioned, making a difference in millions of lives, we all have things going on in our lives. And the reason you remind me of that was, I think people that battle with mental issues, or whether it's diagnosed depression or not. I went through something a few years ago where I was never diagnosed, but it was the lowest point in my life. in my at that moment with my wife, our relationship, it was awesome. With my kids, it was awesome. But there was one part of my life that was just really, really killing me. And we don't talk about it. There's still such a stigma. I had a conversation with a player a few weeks ago, and I didn't mention the other players' names, but I said to this young man, I said, just in the past 3 months alone, I've talked to 4 families that are dealing with almost, I don't want to say the exact same thing because we all have different things, and he kind of had this whole peaceful thing come over him, spirit, whatever it was, where he was like, really? Because I think so often people think that they're the only ones going through it, and they're afraid to talk to a coach or anyone else about it because the fear of being told to snap out of it or just get over it, or and it's not that easy, and they're not alone.
Absolutely. And you mentioned how social media makes people compare themselves. Well, I mean, that's one of the most basic thing. Like, literally everybody's so happy and I'm crying myself to sleep. I can't have anybody know about this, and then it's almost soothing. And I remember at times, multiple times, being a teenager and wondering if I'd be happier dead. And, it's a soothing thought. It's a self-loathing. It's a soothing thought. And it's, it can be really easy to trick yourself, but every time I've shared and every time I've had this kind of conversation, and this is the first time really on the show that we've gone this deep, which I'm really happy about right now. Other people then share their story. And I've almost never come across somebody who is at least comfortable with themselves, who doesn't say like, yeah, no, when I was a teenager, I either attempted suicide or thought of it or whatever it was, or struggled with depression or whatever it was. So I think you're so right that the conversation needs to be there. And the number one thing these guys need to know is that they're literally not the only one. And, so far from being the minority that they're actually the majority.
Well, and I don't want to go too far into this, and maybe there'll be a second show, but
sure.
And once again, for anyone listening, obviously we're not experts, but
right.
I think all too often sitting in a classroom and studying books, life makes us more of an expert sometimes than reading some book.
Right.
But Coronado Island, where I coach, there are 2 ways to get there: a man-made, what they call the Strand, several mile long strip of land, or the bridge. And it's heartbreaking, but just like many other bridges, it's almost once a week that you hear about someone that tries to jump off the bridge, successfully or not, and take their life. And they're on that bridge, all you see is the ocean. And it's picture perfect. And, and I think too often do does anyone else and maybe start posting more videos of the crappy stuff, but we post our A game. And I don't think we're trying to be fake. My wife and I were talking about this the other day. We're taking this trip up in, I think, 2 weeks up the coast during our dead period. We're just going to get in the car and she's rented a convertible. It's better gas mileage than my truck. But we're going to go up the coast for 8 days and just explore new things. And we're going to do a live vlog on, Facebook or Instagram or whatever. Which she joked about. She said, I'm afraid because we have car conversations that we often say, all right, we can't say this out in public. Yeah. So I might go from a lot of followers to maybe just one if you hang on with me. But I think the important thing is, I kind of pride ourselves in not being fake. But even saying that, I think we all post. We don't post the bologna sandwich I made this morning, which I didn't really, but we post the steak dinners.
Yeah.
We don't post the time that we dropped the weight in our toe and our toenails all black. We post when we had a good workout. And so I think we need to just kind of make an effort to post those failures. I forget who he is, but there's a coach on Twitter, Derek something. I wish I remembered now.
We can we can post production put it on. If you can get it to me,
but he sometimes posts his squat failures, and I love that. And I remember sending a message one time. I'm like, I love that you send that, and it's just he knows what he's doing. He's good form and great shape. But I was like, we need to see more of that. We need to see people saying, hey, this failure is okay because I know I'm going to stick with it, trust the process, and get where I need to go. Yep. Love you guys. So
that's awesome. Yeah. I think that, just as a segment is a great message. And I'm really glad that we got the chance to delve into that. I had a couple other things here, mostly from your tweets that I wanted to bring up. along some of the same lines, but here's one. It was 10 things that kill team culture. And I'll list them off here as selfishness, entitlement, jealousy, laziness, only being half in or less, egos, going easy on teammates, excuses and blame, not training with the team, and fear of holding each other accountable. And those are all great. But the one that stuck out to me is that number 6 there, egos, because I think in some ways you can apply that to all of them. And, this is line mentality. We talk about the lineman. I love about line play is that I think it's got the least ego of any position group.
Completely agree.
It starts at the top. There's less repetition, but it comes down to, a lot of factors in there creating that. But talk a little bit about ego and when it relates to all of those things, when it relates to a team, coaches, players, all that.
So I have to give credit here. For years, I always thought about ego as, and we all know him, but that one coach we coached against, coached with, or the teammate we played with that just thought they were better than everyone else. They weren't a team player. They weren't coachable as a coach or a player. They just thought their crap didn't stink.
Mm-hmm.
And then a good friend of mine who I met through church out here, and actually we've been doing some podcasts together, shared his brother had shared with him. Do you know Dr. Wayne Dyer?
Mm-mm.
Okay. So he's an old school. I'm dating myself now. He's still around, but I don't even know what his title would be, but he's written dozens of books, self-help, all these different things. But he posed that we all have egos. And when I first heard this, he'd shared this book with me. I'm like, I'm reading it. I'm like, all right, I don't. I don't think I'm better than other people. I know I have strengths. I know I have certain weaknesses, and that's why I try to hire coaches that are better than I am at defense or better than I am at this or that. And it's easy to find those guys because I have a lot to work on. But I remember reading this thinking to myself, I don't think I'm better than other people, And then he shook my world. I was like, what the freak? He said ego, E-G-O, and once again, this is not my own, said is anytime we edge God out. And I was like, wow. Suck. I was like, I got the biggest ego of them all. And what I mean by that is, when I'll turn it on to you for a second, with all you're doing with this podcast, with your business, the goals you would share with me, and I love that. And there's no doubt for me that you're going to make that. You're going to make that happen. If you go to bed some night and you're like, I don't know if I'm that guy, you're edging God out. If I think, well, hey, when my wife said to apply for that first coaching job and I started to doubt my abilities, I'm edging God out. Anytime that I think I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not bold enough, brave enough, I don't stay in the fight for the long term, I'm edging God out. So I thought, man, we all have egos. And the more I can trust the process, the more I can stop telling God my plans, but saying, all right, what do you have for me today? And just go out there and try to be, an instrument in his hands, the less I start edging God out. As far as that list you referred to on Twitter, I think our ego, parents sometimes, and parents are great, but I think sometimes parents would rather invest paying $40 an hour to a personal trainer than not have them train with a coach that's been doing it just as long and has just as good facilities or not. And sometimes they don't. Sometimes the high schools don't have facilities or knowledgeable coaches. And I think doing additional training is always a great thing, as long as you give your body time for rest and recovery.
Yeah.
But I think all too often our ego sometimes, as far as players, I mentioned, not holding teammates accountable. It's easy. I told our team captains now, hey, congratulations, you guys were voted captains. But now you have to do the hard part. You have to call teammates out. When they're going to the beach and not coming to workouts, where they're going here or not, whatever. And it's not an easy thing to do, to have those conversations. But I think ego kind of ties in, whether it's the ego that I originally thought of or edging God out, could tie into any of those. And ego's a dangerous thing.
Yeah. And I think you nailed it. I mean, that's exactly the discovery I've had, also by reading books that say a very similar thing, but try to word it in a way that will help somebody who maybe doesn't have the same understanding of the word God as somebody else. And so anyways, point being, it's you could say false belief, right? Where you mentioned you were self-doubting about applying for a job, but when you were talking about the players, helping each other, getting on each other about not being at workouts and whatnot, I see the ego as being in player one, the player who is the captain. He has a fear of calling a teammate out, right? He's afraid that he's going to hurt his feelings. He's afraid of how he'll be seen, right? And then the other kid, he has a fear of working hard, maybe for one thing, but also a kid like that might get angry if he gets called out by a teammate, right? Mm-hmm. So it's this kind of self-serving circle of ego, and both guys have a fear in their heart that is in the way of them being the best they can be. So that, and you can reword that as edging God out, right? If you see it that way, but you can also reword that as having a belief that goes against the thing that you're supposed to be doing, and it, deep down in your heart. So on that note, I think it's an opportunity because, a lot of people might be afraid to delve into different subjects or whatever. And obviously, we have both have good respect for other people's opinions and things, but I'm curious if there was somebody who wasn't raised with a concept of God. For me, I was raised in the church, but it's tough because I have this kind of a mental image of like a bearded guy in the clouds, mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people have that. And so as soon as they hear talk from a religious standpoint, they'll turn their ears off or turn their brain off. How would you describe God in a way that would make sense to somebody who knew nothing about it, or maybe even was raised in a different culture?
That's a great question, because your other ones have been horrible. No, that's it's funny. My wife, and she's actually sitting to the left of me here, kind of I think scrolling on her phone or whatever. My faith has always been there for me, and my wife, who is my rock and my best friend, has kind of been like this with her faith. And what I mean by that, and I know she doesn't mind me sharing this or she'll throw something at me. Earlier on in our marriage, she had said to me, several times to me and then to family members or friends, Kurt's my rock. And and my ego got in the way, and I was like, yeah, I'm her rock. I don't like that anymore. And I want to be her best friend, and I want to be her everything. But when it comes to faith, I want her to have her own faith. So God forbid something happens to me tomorrow, that Christ is her rock. Mm. Now, my brother's a self-proclaimed doubting Thomas. And we've had conversations more so in the past years, but when our cousin got into a car accident, he's a quadriplegic before he passed away. And he's like, well, you believe everything happens for a reason. I'm like, I do. He's like, well, why'd that happen to John? And he was mad at me. I'm like, I don't know. I don't claim to know the reasons. I just believe there is a reason. And our job is not to ask why, it's to ask what. So to answer your question, as far as faith, what does God look like? For me, it's a feeling. It's whether it's that time that I had that coaches meeting and Derek said, kids don't fear you. And I was like, I don't ever want to be feared. And he was using fear and respect as the same thing. Right. And that's not wrong. That's just different. Right. It's just, he wasn't wrong in saying that, but he just saw the two as if you respect a coach, you fear a coach. And for me if I love my players, they might be intimidated in certain moments. Well, coach is intense right now, but they're never going to fear me. They're going to know they can come to me. So for me, it's a feeling. I know that I can't prove God exists to anyone. I also believe that if CNN comes out with a post or a news story later today saying scientists prove God is a joke, it won't faze me. I will continue to go on and live my life the same way I always have. So for me, it goes back to something I had heard years ago. That, a quote that said, "Always preach the gospel, and when necessary, use words." I feel like I can preach Christ's existence every day to my players and not have to mention Christ or God or Jesus or the Bible at all to them. But they will, just like, all of us, I had mentioned to someone the other day, a math teacher I had, that, and I hated math growing up, 7th grade math teacher who just sat in his desk at the beginning of every class and just talked to us. And I remember sitting there as a 7th grader, a moment I'll never forget, thinking he cares about us. He doesn't care about math right now. He just cares about us as people.
Right.
And that was one of the first instances I knew I wanted to be a teacher, because he cared about us as people. And I was blessed to have been raised by parents who loved and cared and were present and active in there. And I think nowadays, how many children don't have that, come from broken homes or whatever the case might be, and the need for it's so great. So children, I think everyone needs Christ in their lives, but no one needs to hear me preach it.
Right.
You know, so I need to try to live it. Our kids need to see me when we're getting our teeth kicked in during a game. They need to see me being intense and focused and driven and not change as a coach. And I've seen that way too many times where I see coaches attack kids and attack their coordinators during a game, after a game, the following morning. And actually the best compliment I shared with him and thanked him again just the other day, my defensive coordinator who I mentioned had applied for the job at Coronado, has been there for 18 years. He had sent me a very long text or email, I think it was an email, the morning after our first game when I was head coach. And we got beat up pretty bad. And the email was something I'll never forget, just saying that would have never happened in the past. And what he was referring to was not the game, but Saturday morning, our coaches meeting and the team meeting. He said in years past, there would have been finger pointing, blaming, yelling, slamming doors, kids quitting. He said, but the way you handle it, he was just very complimentary. And it was just a testament to who I'm trying to be. That I yell, I scream, I'm passionate, I'm loud, but I'm no different when we're winning or losing. I'm going to try real hard not to let the outside noise of the world phase me and change who I am. So to someone that doesn't have a testimony and doesn't know of God, I think the best thing we can do is live in a way, not preach in a way, but live in a way that they just look at us, whether they ever ask or not, and just realize there's something different. There's something different about them.
Yep.
So yeah.
Yep. No, I think that's fantastic. You know, I was mostly asking for myself to I had a feeling you'd have a great answer, and I think that's phenomenal. You know, and it's so important. In a very similar way, my thought was, you know, somebody might be listening to this hoping to get some X's and O's, hoping to get some workout tips, and they got, you know, we didn't put it into words exactly how to do those things, but they definitely got some lessons that are going to help them win beyond any X's and O's tips. And I think that's a kind of a comparable allegory, you know, that without using the exact words, you can show somebody and teach somebody by being a certain way. And I think that just emanates off of you. So what we'll do is, you know, we'll have to get back on and do a follow-up. And I mean, you know, my dream is to be able to just do one of these a day and do short bits and do X's and O's. And I've got the ability to, you know, I've got a video guy who's pretty good, and we can have, you know, drawing on the screen and talk football and stuff. So I'd love to have you back on. And I think this is a great intro, you know, just to who you are as a person and a coach and a father and a grandfather, although you don't look it. And,
Appreciate it.
And I think that it's very valuable for anybody out there, whether they're a parent, player, or coach. And so very good. And I appreciate you being on. This has been really great.
It's been a blast. I really appreciate you. And I'm excited to, I think after you had reached out to me on Twitter, I had done a little trolling as well. And I think I just followed your personal account as well.
Nice.
So you skinny lineman, something like that. You went from,
Yep. Lost some weight and then enduring the battle of trying to keep it off.
Hey man, well, you look good, so keep it up.
I appreciate it. What's the tricks? I mean, I know it's a lifelong deal.
Yeah, it truly is. You know, one of the best advice my father gave me as far as playing, and he was great as being a father, not trying to be a coach. Mm-hmm. But he told me, hey, as soon as your playing days are over, drop that weight. And I was never fat. I was just too short for my weight.
Sure.
But no, it took a minute. But it was I actually shot up to 275.4. I remember mentioned a few years ago I was going through some just personal stuff,
Yeah.
And kind of an excuse, but also I wasn't in the mindset to care, you know.
Yeah.
And I've always loved working out, but I've just now started to eat right. So I'm my goal is to get to 240 by the first day of doubles. So
There you go.
I'm going to make it happen. I was 251 this morning.
Okay. Yeah, you
So
could do that. You
I'm
got
getting
what,
there.
6 weeks?
Yeah. So
Good.
we'll get there. I might spend a lot of time in the sauna the day before, but
Yeah. For me, this next 6 weeks is a very hard time to diet when I'm so busy, you
yeah,
know, but it can get done, but it's just on my feet so much, but not really burning the calories I would be if I was on my feet working out and
right.
on the feet coaching, you know, so it's comparable to for when you guys go to doubles.
Yeah,
That's a stress eating time of the year if there
it
ever
is.
was one. But
It is.
Coach, how can people find you? I know you got your website, you got the Twitter, you got the podcast, all good
Yeah.
things.
On Instagram, Twitter, it's Coach Kurt Hines, and my daughter and my wife are the masterminds behind most things in my life. But they're the ones that get the website up and running. So that's Coach Kurt Hines also. So you can see the different podcasts. I don't have them all up there, but some of the podcasts I've been on, and different links to different stuff. But really, you know, my whole dream with that is trusting God's plan and just saying, hey, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. You know, they can be the smart ones behind the scenes, but just putting stuff out there, and if it resonates with people, great. But I've been, you know, the great thing is, and we tell our players all the time, watch what you put out there. It's going to cost you a job, or uh, you're gonna lose an offer or not, depending on what you tweet, retweet, and put out there. As much as we preach it to our players, it's true for us as adults. You know, someone's going to watch what you're doing someday and want to connect with what you're doing and jump on board or not.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I've been blessed to speak over, you know, I'll say throughout the country, because it's been, you know, East Coast, Mississippi, Utah. It sounds more impressive when I say all over the country, but it's been across the country. But and once again, I just think, you know, we put good stuff out there. If it's from the heart, it's going to resonate with the right people.
Absolutely. And it's, I could see the impact it's making. It's already made an impact on me, and keep it up, you know, because I can promise you, I mean, you've got all the goods for it too, you know, all the God-given talent, good on camera and all that. And we're heading towards a time where it's going to pay off strongly to be somebody who has a lot of followers, but also just has the ability to influence people in a positive way. So it's going to be good.
Well, I'm blessed to have connected, and I look forward to just continuing with what we're both doing and seeing where it goes.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Absolutely. For all you guys out there, make sure you go follow Coach. We'll put the handles in the notes on everything, and we'll see you guys next time on Line Mentality.
I appreciate you.